ring if you're ready to care. Oh, let's talk power, let's talk speed. Hosted by the one and only WETOODEEP. Turn it up loud, feel the power in your seat. This is slapping me, yes, slapping me.
What is good, everybody? It is your boy WETOODEEP, and we are back with another episode of the Slapping Meat Community Show. We're changing things up. We're going to start recording on Monday nights. And here's why. I kind of want to start watching NXT live, and that's kind of really the only reason. NXT is kind of the only wrestling I watch at this point, and so I want to be able to enjoy and watch that, and so we're gonna record on Mondays, and so that's sort of the housekeeping. I'll start with that. Like, I know you guys are wondering why we're getting a show on Monday. Well, that's why it's gonna start coming out Monday nights rather than Tuesday nights. So what that means is, if you're in the Discord and you want to get questions in, get them in by about 7 p.m. Eastern Time Monday. And so there's that. So before we jump in the ropes, before we jump forth and deep, I got another topic that doesn't fit within those realms. That I want to lead this off with, and that is a segment that I'm calling Dear Disney. More specifically, Dear ABC, Dear Disney, whoever runs all the channels that I just lost on YouTube TV. And I know it's so easy to blame, well, this is YouTube TV. And typically I do. When these negotiations happen, typically I do blame YouTube TV. But this is 100% this situation with YouTube TV losing all the Disney channels, and that's ABC, all the ESPN channels, anything affiliated owned by Disney or anything like that, right? This situation, excuse me, I believe is Disney as a company pulling the card that I knew would happen when they created the ESPN standalone app. That we no longer need. Disney's sitting there thinking, with this app, we no longer need anyone to subscribe. We don't need YouTube TV subscribers, right? To deal with, or like, we don't need the subscribers of YouTube TV. And eventually I think there's going to be, hey, Sling, we don't need you. Hey, Fubo, we don't need you. Hey, DirecTV, we don't need you. They can just come direct to us. And they can pay the $30 a month to get ESPN, and then pay whatever it costs to get Disney Plus, which Disney Plus isn't going to host sort of the entertainment side of that whole company, right? For example, so you'll have to subscribe to Disney Plus to get your Hulu stuff, your ABC channels, all of that, and then ESPN direct to consumer, you'll subscribe to that to get your sports stuff, right? Or maybe they'll do a big bundle where it's like $50 or whatever, right? And you see what Disney's trying to make the play here. And eventually what that means is every channel is going to eventually do that. And this is the problem, right? Because here's some of the things that I saw, right? Oh, well, I'm just going to leave YouTube TV and I'm going to go over to Hulu. Well, that's exactly what Disney wants you to do. Because I don't think they're going to pull that. I don't think they're necessary. See, so Hulu's becoming Disney Plus. I don't know if you guys know that. They're going to get rid of Hulu, and it's going to be Disney Plus, and all the entertainment, whether it's Disney Channel or ABC, all of that's going over to be what I believe is the Disney Plus app. It's what they're going to officially rebrand it eventually into. That Hulu's sort of going away is how I understand it. And so you'll have Disney Plus and then ESPN direct to consumer. Right? And so everyone's sort of assumption is, well, I'll just go over to Hulu. No, because that's exact right. And I actually made a statement to someone. I was like, that's exactly what Disney wants you to do. Because Disney owns Hulu. This is the problem with allowing a network to own a streaming service, right? I think long term, if we were to go back 10 years ago, right? If we were to go back 10 years ago, streaming made sense, but I don't think we thought about the long-term repercussions of what streaming would eventually turn into in terms of it sounds good on theory, but I don't think we calculated the fact that a lot of these companies are in it solely for the money. I don't know if we calculated that. Let me say, for example, right? So Netflix, as we speak right now, is not owned by a big, like a Disney type thing, right? And so Netflix as a company, they're not owned by a major cable television corporation. Whereas, for example, Peacock is owned by NBC Universal. And so what NBC Universal can do is say, hey, we're going to follow in Disney's steps. We're just going to take all of our NBC Universal channels and we're going to pull them out. And we have the ability to just do what Disney's doing, right? Where Time Warner doesn't have that capability. So Time Warner sort of relies on, right? Sure, it has HBO Max, but Time Warner isn't one of those major producers right now, right? So you got Viacom, which owns Paramount. When I say major five, so you got excuse me, Viacom, which owns Paramount. You have NBC Universal. You have Disney. You have the company that owns Fox News, because Fox News isn't owned by Disney. I can't think of oh boy, who is it? We'll figure that out. We'll figure it out. Excuse me. Excuse me. So you have this isn't what I wanted. We're going to look, because I used to have this pulled up, like saved. Here it is. So excuse me, there's 6 companies. My apologies. General Electric, I don't know if you know this, General Electric actually owns NBC Universal and Comcast. I did not know that. Okay, so General Electric, which owns Comcast, NBC, Universal, right? You have News Corp, which is what owns Fox News, Wall Street Journal, New York Post. Disney, of course, owns Miramax, Marvel, ESPN, Pixar, ABC. That's probably the biggest. You have Viacom, which owns Paramount, BET, Nickelodeon, Nick Jr., MTV, CMT, those companies. I messed up. Warner Brothers, Time Warner, all of them. They're now, Time Warner Discovery. So CNN, HBO, all the Time Warner Bros. Stuff, right? And then you have CBS, which no longer owns the NFL, I don't think, but Smithsonian, Showtime, shows like 60 Minutes, Jeopardy. I thought that was under. I could have sworn Paramount and CBS were under Viacom. Let me verify that first. I think that's true. I could be wrong, but either way, there's like 5 major companies that own all of television. And if you let those 5 companies do what they are determined to do, which is just make as much money as possible, and you allow them to run the stream. This is why when streaming first really became popular about 10 years ago, I stated, I wish there was a way I wish there was an app that allowed you to pick your favorite shows and just watch those, right? And you pay for the amount of content that you create or that you use, or something, or hey, pay $9 a month and you can choose whatever you. Sort of like what Apple Music. Like I wish. And we forgot about, Apple's getting up there in the entertainment game as well with TV, but sort of like Apple Music or Spotify, I thought TV streaming should have been very similar, where you had a company like Spotify who really made this popular, streaming music, where you had a company like Spotify who allowed you for a price to basically stream any song that is distributed through the website, which for the most part is every song ever made, right? And excuse me, they don't own, as far as I'm understanding, they don't own any studios or anything. And so for me, I thought that was like a perfect, right? So if we could get something like a Spotify, where for 16 to I'd even pay $20 a month to pay $20 a month for this service to watch any TV show ever made that's distributed through this app that isn't owned by one of the major studio type corporations. If we had an app like that, that would make streaming so much more useful. I want to watch this. I want to watch it, right? And instead of let me tell you where the problem came in with streaming. I'm taking a lot longer on this topic than I really wanted to. This was really just a note to Disney saying I'm really not a big fan of you guys at the moment, and I see the play that you're doing, right? But let me walk this through real quick. Here's what really became the issue. Here's where we have the issue. When networks required exclusive contracts to streaming, right? So, for example, in music, the reason that you can listen to practically anything is because there's no exclusive deals where this song is only exclusively can only be exclusive. Now they do that on their podcasting side, where, for example, Joe Rogan can only host his show on Spotify, right? And I think he's reworked it to where clips can go on YouTube now or something. Not exactly certain. But for a minute there, Joe Rogan was exclusively, right? I think for podcasting, that's fine. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I think the appeal is to try to get as many people to watch as possible. I understand the appeal of a Spotify to exclusively get Joe Rogan, at the time, the biggest podcaster in the world. I think where that hurts is I don't listen to Joe Rogan because I don't have Spotify, right? And I also don't have 4 hours of time to sit here and listen to someone else bloviate. But especially seeing that a lot of Joe Rogan's guests, I don't have necessarily a care in the world for, right? To actually listen to. But in television, what happened is you get these deals like with Netflix and WWE, where like Monday Night Raw is exclusive to this channel, or the shows are like exclusive through these channels, rather than allowing the show to. Imagine how that would change television if I was a showmaker, and instead of having to go through CBS or through Fox or through Disney or through one of those major companies to pilot my show and try to get it on, I can just go to this insert new app, whatever we want to call it, and say, hey, here's my show. It's really good. Netflix was going to take it. Here's what they're offering me for exclusivity. Here's what I want to do. I want to go through you guys, where you can distribute it out to a much, I don't, where it's not exclusive to where you only can watch it on CB. Like, I wish we had that ability for show writers and for the fans, to where there was an app where, well, I want to watch this show and I want to watch this show, but I don't want to have 14 different apps to watch 4 shows, right? Anyway, that's my ranting for the day on YouTube TV and ESPN. I see what you're doing, Disney. I'm not a big fan of it, but I kind of expected it. I don't expect to ever get those shows back or those channels back. Or if they do, it'll be part of a packet, the entertainment package, where you'll have to like purchase at like a prorated through YouTube TV price of like $10 a month. And if that's the case, I might consider getting it. If and only if it's going to give me the ability to watch WWE pay-per-views. Because I could really care less about ESPN to begin with. I don't watch a lot of college football or sports in general. So it really doesn't affect me, to be honest. But I do think it's kind of crazy what they're doing. So now with that, let's go in the ropes. And there's not a lot of topics. The one thing I want to talk about in wrestling is coming out of Saturday night's main event, which I didn't watch. Actually kind of forgot it was happening. I was in Clemson, South Carolina for the Clemson game. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Completely forgot about this. The results kind of went the way I thought they would, just from seeing the matches. But the big thing coming out of this weekend with Saturday night's main event is CM Punk holding the World Heavyweight Championship, Jade Cargill holding the Women's Championship on SmackDown, and if you take a look at NXT, Raw, and SmackDown, the amount of champions on those brands that were pulled in from AEW. WWE is looking excuse me, WWE is looking awfully elite right now. They could probably, but let me tell you why this is happening. Or why I believe it's happening. I think what WWE is doing is, I think what they're doing is they either, when they sign these people, said, hey, we're going to give you a title opportunity. That might be a part of the contract. I'm not going to stay away. I'm not going to refuse that as a possibility. That could have been the case. But what I also think is happening in regards to that is, hey, we want to send a message to the wrestling world, to the mid-card type wrestlers in AEW. When your contract's over, give us a call, because we'll take you to be a champion. You will hold cold if you come over. And so you look at the main roster, Raw and SmackDown, where you have Cody Rhodes, Jade Cargill, Stephanie Vaquer, and now CM Punk as your 4 major champions on that brand, that we would consider world champions in the men's and women's division. Excuse me. You go down to NXT, you have Ricky Saints as your NXT champion. You have Blake Monroe as your North American champion, who I think will eventually be the one that beats Tatum Paxley for the NXT Women's Championship. Maybe down the line at some point. And I'm going to give half credit because Sean Spears currently right now is the manager of Tatum Paxley. So he's sort of affiliated as well, right? So Ethan Page is down there as well. And so the two men's champions are former in AEW, right? Right? And so there's a lot of elite type stuff going on. And I can't help but wonder as well, excuse me, I can't help but wonder, maybe this is why the product sucks. Where instead of 18,000 people in arenas last year at this time, you have 6,500 expected for tonight's Monday Night Raw. I find it kind of funny. I made a joke the other about a month or so ago about Beyond the Junkyard doing every week a ticket section. It's not that weird. It's something new, something creative. It's not really that big deal, but if we want to talk about tickets for a second, WWE shows aren't selling the way they used to. Partially because of the pricing, but I also think a lot of wrestling fans are tuning out of WWE's product. Which, can we go back? I don't know the exact episode. It's been a long year. I think this is like episode 85 this year. At some point during this year, very early in the year, I made a mention of a TikTok that I had watched, or a YouTube short. I'm pretty sure it's YouTube short, because I don't have TikTok. I'm not active on TikTok. I have the app on my phone. Now there's several apps on my phone that I downloaded, and I haven't opened them in weeks, right? If ever, since I've downloaded it. So TikTok's one of those where I'm not tempted to open TikTok. Now, 2-3 years ago, I was. I was on TikTok every single day. I just don't care about TikTok right now. I deleted the account that had all the people that I was following, and I'm just too lazy to go back with this new account and to refollow everyone. And I just don't care about TikTok when I can see the same videos on YouTube Shorts or Facebook, right? Or something like that, right? Like I haven't had Instagram in several months. And every now and then there's like a temptation to re-download it, create a new account. But then part of me is like, but there's really no reason to do it, right? And so but anyway, I mentioned a YouTube short of this dude who was saying, with the ticket pricing and the booking and the Endeavor really making it out to try to make as much money as they possibly can, that was going to be the downfall of the product. And right, and throughout this entire year, the season 4, the 4th season of this podcast, as we've made changes as well this year, it's been a crazy 2025, hasn't it? We're entering month 11 of the year, November 3rd. We are recording on. It's been a wild year with changes to WWE and changes to the podcast itself, right? And well, I remember vividly saying I agreed with this video that this was going to be the downfall if they continue down this path. And here we are less than a year later, and fans are tuning out. People aren't caring. We were talking in the Discord about Saturday night's main event. I saw them discussing it, and I saw Highlander in the Discord. It made a statement about, this has been the first show or whatever that I've watched in several weeks, and guys, it's been the same for me. And it used to be, well, I'll just keep up with the YouTube videos, or I'll just keep up with the on the website the little link that shows the results. I don't even check that anymore. Like, I'm so tuned out of Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown that I have no idea what's going on the product right now. I really don't. I have zero idea what the story is. I see things on or on X every now and then, and on Facebook that sort of keep me updated. But like, at the same time, like, if I were to tune into the show today, if I had Netflix, I would have no idea what was going on. And so I just have zero interest in the product. I think we're really seeing the result of Endeavor trying to make as much money as possible. And I said earlier this year that I thought that part of what was happening was because they incurred so much debt buying the company, they were trying to make as much from it that they could either A, refinance the debt, to where they could show the bank, hey, we added value to the company in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through the Netflix deal or through, the Saudi deal or whatever. Hey, we added value, so can we refinance and then, right, to make the loan less amount, or so, to help pay off this loan or whatever, to help them with their budget. But all of that crunching numbers and all of that was going to, like, I've said numerous times this year that all of the business side, if the business side became too much of a determiner of what happens on the screen, then people were going to pull away. It wasn't going to take a lot to get people to stop watching WWE, because a lot of people were already, the anti-WWE faction was there, and some of them were watching the show, and it wasn't going to take but a spark to get them to walk away. And so I'm not surprised that attendance is down. I'm really not. And I think we have to call that out. We're not going to call it out the same way we called out AEW's lack of attendance, because the reason is two very different reasons. AEW's lack of attendance, the last couple years, have just been because the show isn't good, right? And they're not catering to a widespread, a wide net, a big tent audience. They're really focusing on booking towards the sickos. WWE's lack of attendance this year is because they charge too much, they're getting greedy, and the product itself is not good. And so the difference is they got too big. They were trying to market too big of a tent. There's a balance that you have when it comes to anything, right? That you want to market to get new fans, but you also want to market to the people who are already watching, right? And if you cross the line and do too much, if you go too mainstream to where you're trying to market towards those, I'm going to use an example that's going to be kind of weird to use. But it's, we've talked about religious topics on the show the last few weeks. So I'll use this example. It's sort of like what we call in Christianity as the seeker-sensitive church. Right? And for the last really 20, 30 years, there's been what we call the seeker-sensitive movement within Christianity, where churches are starting to act like businesses and have been acting like businesses, and not in the way of getting funding, but how they get people to fill the seats. And so they start to do things that are sort of mainstream culture thing, right? And so the music becomes a little bit more poppy, more concert-esque vibes. It's more emotional. And the whole idea is, if we can set this tone and try to really copy the world and what the mainstream is doing in the secular world, then maybe we can get those people in the churches. And what we've realized doing that over the last 30 or some odd years, it doesn't actually work. Here's what we actually realized by doing that, and the main proponents of this have been sort of mainstream, Protestant, meaning not Catholic, or Orthodox. And so what we've actually saw is there's statistics coming out that Gen X and Gen Z are the two least religious generations in American history. And now we have Gen Alpha coming. The kids that were born like 05 till now. Right? You have like Gen Alpha, and I think the next generation after that is going to be called Gen Beta, I believe. But you have those two generations. And Gen Alpha specifically, that's coming of age. They're becoming adults. And what we've noticed is in the studies, in the polls that we have done, and by we I mean the science, the people who do the polls, what they have done in the for the last 2 decades, right, from basically from 2000 to about 2020, every year women seem to be the most religious group. And what we have seen over the last 5 years or so in this new generation, where Gen X, Gen Z, it was mostly women who were being religious. What we're seeing is in Gen Alpha, there is a larger percentage. It's like 60% of Gen Alpha are claim to be religious, claim to be Christian, and well above the women. So the trend that's happening is that the men are being more religious and the women are being more progressive, more liberal, and less religious because of that. But these men in Gen Alpha who are becoming more religious, they aren't coming to mainstream Protestant denominations and churches. They're going to Catholic or Eastern Orthodox churches who are more structured, less seeker-friendly. The issue that I have with that is that it's not necessarily they're not going there to learn the truth. They're going there because it's their structure, right? And so what we've realized is that the more the church proclaimed a service, a Christianity that tried to market towards the mainstream and try to be seeker friendly, the assumption was that was going to get more people in the seats. But really the opposite happened, because a lot of Protestant churches lost members who walked away, became rebellious. And then the next generation, as more men became religious, they just didn't come to these mainstream, too deep into the culture type churches, and they went to where it was super strict, super, there was a guideline to how worship went and stuff like, right? And so what we realized was the more seeker friendly we got, the less seekers we got coming in. And it wouldn't have been surprising if you just read the actual holy book you claim to believe, because it says that no one seeks for God. So you're being seeker friendly, but there are no seekers, is kind of the point. We're actually going to talk about that very concept. Kara asked the question, something about that idea, and so I'll go more in depth with my view on that when we get to the question section. But yeah, so WWE. So to finish the analogy, is WWE became more mainstream and more seeker friendly, they got less people. Because here's the idea: a lot of the mainstream don't care about wrestling, right? So there's a balance where, yes, you have to be mainstream, but a lot of the mainstream doesn't care, and so you neglected your audience by going too mainstream. And we actually have a question about probably the biggest example of that this year in Jey Uso. So we'll continue that in the question segment. That's all I got really for In the Ropes, is just, look, we got so much talent that are former AEW talent that are champions now in WWE. And I can make a comment to say, oh, look, WWE actually knows how to build superstars. And I actually agree with that concept, that WWE knows how to build superstars. But I also think there's sort of like a, hey, look at us, look at what we did. We took what you booked as trash and we booked them as treasure. Right? And I'm kind of interested to see how people react to that very concept. But with that, let's go forth and deep here. Let's talk about some football. And what we're going to talk about, we got three major things before we do predictions. So first thing, I don't know if I mentioned it last week, I'm not going to do Deep 5 anymore. It's really hard for me to give a relevant and real rankings when I literally only watch the Patriots every week. And so I'm not going to do Deep 5 anymore. And so this week, of course, we'll do predictions. We're going to discuss the trade deadline. We got some mood from the Eagles today. That's all I saw. And the deadline is Tuesday, I think at 4 p.m. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens tomorrow. As always, we'll talk about Patriots Corner. We'll talk about the Patriots versus the Falcons this week. But we want to start this segment with, I did mention I went to the Clemson versus Duke game. And I don't talk about a lot of college football on here, but I did want to give my review of the experience. And I've been to Clemson before. I've done all the spectacle, right? I genuinely believe Clemson University, Clemson, South Carolina, is one of the greatest places on the planet. There's a reason we have a saying at Clemson that says it's just something about them hills. Because it is just something about them hills that makes you feel home in the stadium, right? It's just something about them hills, man. I don't know what it is. Now, with that being said, we got some things to talk about. First off, Clemson University. I'm a big dude. I need some shuttles that pick up at pick up and drop off at these parking lots, because walking a half mile each way, and this is Piedmont country, right? I don't know if you guys understand how North and South Carolina, what we call the Piedmont or the foothills, right? It's not the mountains necessarily, but it's still very hilly. And walking up and down the a mile total of just uphill, downhill, uphill, down, bro. I'm a big dude. I'm tired, bro. I need some shuttles, but that's not that big of a deal. The bigger of the deal that I have is there doesn't seem to be much organization among the staff working the stadium. So I went with Cody from Beyond the Junkyard, his wife, and his daughter. And his daughter needed like one of those bags they give you when you get overstimulated. They got like the fidget spinners and whatever. I don't remember what they're called. And like a sensory. Then they're called like a sensory bag or something like that for when you feel overstimulated, right? It gets you focused on something. And so they bought the tickets. They were told, go find guest services and you can get one. Well, there's nothing in this entire stadium labeled guest services. So we go to like 4 different booths that were handing out like programs for the game. And they were like, oh, well, you got to go here. No, you got to go down here. You got to go here. You got to go here. And eventually, 3 minutes before kickoff, we found where we were supposed to go. And so I think if you're going to say meet at guest services, I think you need a place actually labeled guest services. Like none of this, especially if you're going to claim to be sensory friendly. This isn't a very sensory friendly practice that or experience where you have 80,000 people in the stadium. You're trying to find your sensory bag. Like, I can imagine if I was one of those people there by myself trying to figure this out, or if I had, like, personally had someone I was even getting frustrated, and it wasn't even anything that was with me, right? And so, other than that, though, once we were able to find our seats, and here's another thing about Clemson, I don't know why they did this, but, like, we sat in, like, row, or section O, row K, right? And so section O is split in half, right? And so, and for whatever reason, when they did the numbers, they put all the odds on one side of the section. The stairs are in the middle, cutting it in half, and then the evens are on the other side of the stairs, right? And so it's really weird numbering, and that was a pain in the butt to work around and navigate, especially when we spent 30, like, if we didn't have to spend 30 minutes looking for this damn sensory bag because it's not labeled where to get them at, we would have been in our seats on time and it would have been perfectly fine and we wouldn't have had an issue and all of that, right? But other than that, the game was fine, other than the results. So let's actually talk football, right? The game was fine. Clemson sucked, man. I was not expecting to win. I thought we were going to win, I'm just going to be honest. But I wasn't expecting it to be a blowout, as many would probably expect from Clemson. And for the most part, it was an enjoyable game. Until the referees decided to play their hand in the worst pass interference call that I have ever seen in my life, that allowed Duke to score. And while I want to blame the refs, I do. It was the worst. Did the refs single-handedly cost us the game? I do believe that. With that being said, you're never going to win games if you give up 46 points. If you're regularly going to give up 46 points to a team like Duke, you don't deserve to win the game. The defense was atrocious. Atrocious. Which is scary because that's what I thought was going to be our saving grace this year. The offense played fine. We scored 45. And so This defense is atrocious. Did the refs cost us the game? Absolutely. But it really shouldn't have been in a situation where that play should have mattered. And so as much as I can be upset at the refs, and I'm upset with the refs, I'm pretty annoyed with them. Because the ACC has the worst reffing crew in college football. Right? And that's just my opinion. It consistently, year after year, the worst refereeing in college football comes out of the ACC, in my opinion. And I just, oh boy, what a call that PI was. It really, like, I'm not the biggest fan of, like, blaming the refs for like losing games. But I think this is well deserved for the fan base to be mad at the referees here, right? It's just a blatantly bad call. But anyway, so I was in Clemson Friday night, Saturday for the game. We stayed Saturday night, and I left Sunday morning. Sunday, I left at like 12 o'clock. And I started my drive up, about 3.5 hour drive from Clemson to my house in the Charlotte area. And around 1 o'clock, I turned on the Patriots game and listened to it on the way up, driving. I got home around halftime and was able to watch the second half. I'll say this. Against the Falcons, wasn't the best game of the year? No. We barely pulled off a victory. But I will say this. A victory is a victory. And I will 100% stand by that. So I think Drake May was a little bit rattled. That Falcons defense, that pass defense is really good. Now Drake May still played like really good football, but it wasn't his best game at all. It wasn't his best. Outside of that, Week 9 has been a pretty interesting week. The Colts lose to the Steelers. Vikings beat the Lions in Detroit was very interesting. Jaguars win in overtime. Panthers beat the Packers. A decent Bills-Chiefs game to end the night Sunday. To end the afternoon Sunday. And then the Seahawks just completely obliterate. If we were doing a Deep 5, the Seahawks would be number 1 this week. I'm just going to say it. They completely obliterated the Commanders. Just completely obliterated them. Joe Flacco, and even in a loss, really, really, really played very good football. For his age. Stafford went off this week with 4 touchdowns, which puts him now the QB leader in passing. Really good week in Week 9. And so my Patriots, Patriot Corner. What do I got to say about the Patriots? It wasn't pretty. It really wasn't. But it is a win. We're 7-2. We're tied for first place in the conference right now. And that, if you would have told me at the halfway mark that the New England Patriots would be 7-2, had beaten the Bills, and were favorites to win the AFC, I would have thought you were kidding. Because I did a lot of that same joking as jokes. Right? I did not actually believe we would actually end up being 7-2 at this point. Realistically, should be 8-1. And if we really want to say we probably shouldn't have lost to the Raiders, we should be undefeated at this point. Like, if we played the type of football we played in October and September, we would be undefeated. but it's 6 in a row. Really good defensive play from the Patriots. The offense is really good. This takes us into like the trade deadline. We'll talk about the Eagles making 3 big trades in the last 2 or 3 days here in a minute. But I want to talk about what I want the Patriots to do at the deadline. And that is absolutely nothing else. We traded Keon White. We traded Kyle Duggar. I'm okay with Fernie Jennings being traded. I know but that's the only other player I think we should trade away. Grab some more late draft picks. I don't want a new receiver. I understand the need to want to go out and try to trade for a running back. I like what we have. Mondre should be healthy, so we should have Mondre coming back here soon with Travion. And I think his name's Terrell Jennings, who was playing for the injured Ramondre Stevenson this week at the backup position. I like him as well to fill in for Antonio Gibson, who's out for the year. So I don't necessarily think we need to go and make a trade for a running back. As much as I would love to have A.J. Brown, I don't want A.J. Brown on the team. I think our offense is perfectly fine. Unless there was like the perfect offer, maybe a safety. I like Jalen Hawkins. If we could trade for like a big name safety that doesn't cost us too much, I'd be fine. But I'm really happy with the team right now. I think any additions could throw off the locker room. I think the front office needs to realize that even though A.J. Brown's a great player, what is he going to do to contribute, right? I know we're rumored to go after running back and after edge rusher. Am I concerned with our lack of pass rush? A little bit. But Kayvon Chason's got like 6 sacks this year. So, Barmore and Milton Williams do their thing. I don't necessarily think you need sacks to prove you've had a good pressure. I think QB pressures and how much we manipulate and interfere with the quarterback playing, not necessarily sacks, is more important than the actual sack statistic. So I don't want the Patriots to do anything. As we talk about the Eagles, they've traded for Michael Carter from the Jets. In the secondary, traded for Jair Alexander from the Ravens from the secondary, and they just added a pass rusher in Jalen Phillips from Miami. So the first thing I will say is thank you for taking Jalen Phillips. I made it much easier to beat the Dolphins. But the Eagles are really trying to pile up to solidify one of their weak spots on in their defense. To make it, they're making that run. Howie's notoriously good at trading, and so they're doing what he does, what Howie Roseman does. They're going to make a run in the playoffs, and I'm not confident to say they're my favorite, but I would have said the Lions. But the Lions have now lost to the Vikings and the Packers, I believe at home both times. And if you can't defend your home turf in a dome of all places against division teams, I can't say that they're I would put Tampa as my favorite right now. I'm just going to be honest. Oof. So let's move to the predictions for this week. As we do that, as I pull this up, we start Thursday with the Broncos versus the Raiders. Broncos, Falcons, Colts. I'm going Colts. Giants, Bears. We'll go with the Bears. Bills, Dolphins. Obviously, it's going to be the Bills. Vikings, Ravens. I'm going to go Vikings in Minnesota to win. Jets, Browns. I'm going to go Browns. Pats, Bucks. I'm going Buccaneers. I think Patriots are going down to Tampa. And as much confidence as I have in this team, I think we're leaving Tampa with a big fat L. Saints, Panthers will give to the Panthers. Jags, Texans. I actually think the Jaguars will pull off an upset here. Cardinals, Seahawks. I think the Seahawks. Let me refer back. I said Tampa. I think the Seahawks might be the best team in the NFC right now. Sam Darnold's playing some ball right now. Rams, Niners. I'm picking the Rams here to win that game. Lions, Commanders will go Lions. Steelers, Chargers will go Chargers. Eagles, Packers, Monday Night Football. We will go with the Eagles. So that's our predictions for this week. Games. Remember, Falcons and Colts are at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time because they are that's the Germany game, I believe. So let's go to the questions from the Discord. So B-Master starts with a retire, a re-alive, or in a release situation. So I have to retire between the following three: Miz, R-Truth, Becky Lynch. Y'all are going to say this is misogynistic, but I would say Becky Lynch, and my reasoning is solely because she's a mom now, and I believe she should be spending time with her daughter and raising her to be the best young woman she can be. And let Seth do all the money making for the family while she takes care of the family. Re-Alive, Eddie Guerrero, China, Benoit. Anytime Eddie's name is mentioned in a Re-Alive, I'm picking Eddie. Look, I love Benoit. I do. I love China. I don't necessarily think, though, that their loss is more profound and more of a loss than Eddie Guerrero's loss is to the business. Eddie Guerrero, without a doubt, I would Re-Alive. And then release LA Knight, Nia Jax, Jey Uso. I would release LA Knight. I just don't think he serves a purpose in the company anymore. Because he is a main event guy. He's in the top push, but he isn't actually getting pushed for a title, and he's kind of elderly. He's a little bit older, and he's over with the fans, but he's not really over that much with the mainstream sort of casual. He's in a weird position booking wise. So yeah, I would get rid of LA Knight. I think Jay. There's actually a question on how we fix Jay that's about to come up, and I think if we do what I'm about to suggest to do with Jey Uso, he's still a reliable talent, and Nia Jax is really good at being a heel, and so I don't think you should lose that. Excuse me. Next question was, in your opinion, what city would you like to see WrestleMania be held in? Well, I'm going to be biased and say Charlotte, North Carolina. But if I'm being actually realistic, I would love to see WrestleMania in what city is Michigan University in? I want to see WrestleMania in the big house in Michigan. I can't think of the name of that city off the top of my head right now. I know Lansing is Michigan State. What city are the Wolverines in? Ann Arbor, Michigan. That's where I want to see it. Because 100,000 can fit for a football game. You could probably fit about 150 to 170,000 people probably in that stadium. I mean, that's a giant football stadium. I think you could fit 150,000 easily in that stadium for WrestleMania. I think it would be like WrestleMania takes over Michigan University. You can hold, all of the big events in like the student center. So like Access or whatever in the student center. You can hold NXT and all that in the basketball arena. I think they got a pretty decent sized basketball arena. And then you can hold WrestleMania itself in the football stadium with 150,000 people to watch WrestleMania. That's I want to see it in Clemson. I was talking with Cody while we were sitting there. Like, bro, we could definitely hold a WrestleMania in this stadium, right? Now, there's nothing around Clemson. Clemson would never get that spot. But Clemson Stadium sort of has a natural stage with the hill that everyone runs down. And I think it's a decent stadium to hold a big event. You can fit 90 to 100,000 people in Clemson Stadium. But Ann Arbor with the big house definitely is the one that I would go with. If Charlotte wasn't going to ever put a bid in. He said, let's settle this debate. Chicken wings, flats or drums, blue cheese or ranch? Well, let's settle the second question first. Ranch. All day ranch. I don't care what the stupid people in Buffalo have to say. Blue cheese is gross. You're eating what tastes and smells like car exhaust. You grow up. Ranch dressing, without a doubt. Blue cheese is essentially ranch dressing with moldy cheese in it. That's essentially all it is. So just go ahead and eat ranch without the moldy-ass cheese. Now, when it comes to flats or drums, I'm a drum person. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this question. I just prefer drums because there's on average more meat on a drum than there is on a flat. So I would prefer drums dipped in ranch. What happened with Jey Uso? Why was everyone on board in the beginning? And as soon as he got to the main event, everyone turned. First off, I think there are two reasons. One, it's no different than the Yes Movement. Is no different than Kofi Mania. It's no different than a lot of things that happen in like AEW where like the fans want something, and then the second they get it, they now move on to the next shiny object that they want. But the issue with Jey Uso is, Kara said it perfectly in the Discord, he's flavor of the month. His gimmick is highly annoying, right? And so what they started doing was doing the yeet, and then like in the middle of a segment, literally in the middle of a promo, they would stop doing the promo and do the yeet again. And it just got tiresome and useless and monotonous. And so what happened was they overplayed what made Jey Uso special. They overplayed it. And in doing so, it made it no longer special, and then it actually started making people hate it. And I think people realize that Jey Uso just isn't that guy. He's not a main event guy. And I said in the Discord, you're going to make me say the controversial take that Jey Uso's not even the best member of the Usos. Jimmy was. Jey Uso, in my opinion, was the worst member of the Bloodline. Obviously, Roman was the best. Solo, to me, just was fantastic. Sami Zayn in the Bloodline was good. Jimmy was good. Jey Uso was sort of always that background character that I never really seemed to care what he said. Now, he had that one promo when he was talking to Sami, and he said, I don't give a damn what the tribal chiefs say. Right? There were some promos that Jay did good on. But again, he had to feed off the energy of the rest of the group. And there's no issue with that. Some people are role players, right? There are players on basketball teams that are six men that are role players, and they're very good role players. And you need your role players. Jey Uso is a role player. He's not a main event guy. And we realized that this year. Very quickly, even before he won the title, you realized very quickly he was not him. Right? Kara asks, book your WrestleMania card with the current Week 10 schedule. Let's see what you got here with stipulations and results. I think for WrestleMania, I'm not going to do a lot of stipulations, I don't think. But let's pull up the schedule again. So we got Raiders. So I tried to clarify if this was like, look at the matchup and create them. I hope I'm doing this right. I really do. We got Raiders, Broncos. I'm going to do coach versus coach here. I think a Sean Payton versus Pete Carroll and a Walker on a pole match with Battle of the Elderly. And obviously Pete Carroll's going to win that match. Because why the hell not? Right? First off, you're in Vegas. Pete Carroll's going to win that match. Right? But anyway, Colts versus Falcons. Bijan versus Jonathan Taylor, the two running backs, in a I would just have it be like a normal match. I don't think this match needs a stip. But Jonathan Taylor versus Bijan Robinson. And Bijan wins that one. Giants versus the Bears. We're going to go tag team of Scatterboo and Jackson Dart versus Caleb Williams and Roma Dunze. Again, no stipulation. It's just a tag team match. And, of course, Dart and Scatterboo is going to win. Bills, Dolphins. I really want to see the Dolphins coach, Mike McDaniel, in a match. Yeah, Mike McDaniel. So we'll do another coach v. coach here but instead of it being McDermott, because McDermott's no fun, Joe Brady, I think, is the offensive coordinator for the Bills. We'll go Joe Brady versus Mike, or whatever the hell his name is, McDaniel, Mike McDonald, I don't know. There's a Mike McDonald, a Mike McDaniel. Logic. I call him Logic because he looks like Logic. But anyway, and Joe Brady would win. This would be very easy. This would be a hardcore. I just want to see a hardcore match. That'll be fun. Joe Brady likes to throw shit. So, anyway. Ravens, Vikings. I want to see if this is the right match to do. This stipulation that I want to do here. It is not. Ravens, Falcons, we'll hold off there. We'll do Derrick Henry. Who's the Vikings running back? I don't even know. Is that Aaron Jones? It is not. It's Jordan Mason. Aaron Jones is there. No. Ravens. Hawkinson versus Mark Andrews. Battle of the tight ends. in a street fight. We'll do that. We'll have Hawkinson win, because that makes sense to me. Browns versus Jets. Bro. Oh my. Shedeur Sanders. I don't even care who it is for the Jets. I really don't care. We're going to have what I'm going to call a toilet bowl match. You got to give some dude a swirly for 3 seconds. Put his head in the damn toilet and flush the damn toilet. And if you do that and hold him there for 3 seconds, and Shedeur Sanders is fucking losing, I don't care who it is from the Jets. It could be Justin Fields, Quinnen Williams, Garrett Wilson. I don't give 2 fucks. Shedeur Sanders is getting swirlied. Patriots Buccaneers. We're going to call this the Brady Bowl. And it's going to be custody of Tom Brady match. Who gets to claim him when he goes into the NFL Hall of Fame? And it's going to be Baker versus Drake May. And obviously, Drake May's winning this thing. Though I want to see Godwin and Diggs throw hands. That would be great. But yeah, we'll... No, you know what? We haven't done a big boy match yet. If we're going big stakes here, we're going the Brady Bowl, custody of Tom Brady. We're going to go the Hog Mollies. Will Campbell versus Tristan Wirfs, both tackles. One's on the left, one's on the right. So different, right? But we're going to do big boys. And I do Will Campbell's going to win. Panther Saints. Just because of the promos. I want Xavier Legette in there, because you ain't going to understand. He's going to sound like Mark Briscoe doing promos here, because you ain't going to understand a word this dude's saying. But Xavier Legette versus Chris Olave, with Cam Newton as a special guest referee. I'm kidding. This is your piss break match. Ain't nobody care about this match. Anyway, Jacksonville versus Houston. Oh boy. We're doing an owners match. I don't even know the owners of the Texans. But Tony, pull out the neck brace, buddy. Tony Khan versus who's the ownership of the Texans? Cal McNair, bro, old as shit. Do you have a son, Cal? Do you have a son, Cal? That is in. Well, he has 7 sons, so you can pick one of them. It's a fight, Tony Khan. It doesn't matter. The Texans will win. Tony Khan is going to be obliterated. We're doing a TLC match because he likes to do stupid shit. So Tony Khan losing to the McNair family, whoever it is. Anyway. Cardinals Seahawks. feel like this is getting very monotonous at this point. Jackson Smith and Jigba versus Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of stip matches, so I don't. And Jigba, I honestly, I don't care who wins that one. Niners, Mac Jones, baby, versus. Is Garoppolo the backup in LA, the Rams? Yeah. So we're going to have Garoppolo versus Mac Jones for an opportunity to, I don't know, I just like both of them because they're former Patriots. So, but Mac Jones is winning, don't matter the stip. Here's where we get fun with the stipulations. We're doing a mascot match here, Detroit versus Washington. Just because I love General Tutty, the pig. That's my favorite mascot in the league. Other than Blue, the Colts. But the Falcons mascot sucks. It's a waste of a match. But General Tutty versus Rory the Lion, which is a pretty stupid name. But General Tutty's winning. Steelers, Chargers, Aaron Rodgers is in this match. I don't care. Aaron Rodgers versus Justin Herbert. Anyway, and Eagles versus Packers. Yeah, I think we could do another coach match here. I can't think of the Packers coach's name off the top of my head. Sirianni versus the Packers coach. I want Dom, the sort of security guard, to get involved in some way. That'd be fun. I don't know. That's a cool question. I just wasn't able to really give much thought to it. So I hope I did enough justice. She then also asked, would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck? And I'm taking Dino Duck. Give me the Dino Duck. Give me the horse-sized duck, bro. Because one, there's one of them. But second, can you just imagine? Go win big, bro. There's a lot of risk here. You could die easily. You got a Dino Duck that's coming after you. But could you imagine beating Dino Duck and taming the dude after you beat him, and be like, hey, you're my personal Dino Duck now, and walking into town on a Dino Duck, bro? That's crazy, bro. That's out of pocket. We're taking Dino Duck, and we're gonna beat it because there's only one of them. Like my other thinking was like a horse that was the size, 100 horses that are the size of ducks. Just seems like a lot of trouble, right? To try to corral and all of that. Ducks are pretty easy to maintain. You know, I can get them in the water, strangle them out there, walk out of the water riding on my Dino Duck. I just want a Dino Duck. I'm just going to be honest with you. And with that, I'm prompting ChatGTP can you create me an image of a horse-sized duck? I want a Dino Duck, bruh. We're posting this in the Discord as well. She then says, Mr. History, that's me. You'll love this one. If you found a time machine, what's the first place you'd go? Or era? I could give my corny sort of like church answer and say first century Judea to experience the land and the time of of Jesus, but that's a kind of a corny answer that is probably expected, and it's not actually a truthful answer from me, because the more I think about that, that's like a very, I would be considered a barbarian, and so I would not be liked there, so they would the Romans would try to kill me, and the Jews wouldn't like me, so I don't want to go there, too white for that. I would be considered Germanic, because I am Germanic, and yeah. Honestly, I would probably choose. This is going to sound a little corny of an answer. I would like to go to like the beginning of the 1800s in America and try to figure out and understand for myself why England and all of Europe was able to abolish slavery without having to kill a single person. But America had to kill like 750,000 people in the Civil War. And slavery theoretically was not even fully abolished. It was abolished in the fact that the Union abolished it. And the Union won the war, therefore the conservative states of America. Like I don't think people actually understood, or I don't think they taught the 13th and 14th Amendment and the Emancipation Proclamation very well. All the Emancipation Proclamation said was states that are part of the Union could not do slavery. It didn't actually make slavery illegal in the Confederate States, but the assumption was because the Confederate States lost, they are now, prisoners of war to the Union. You're part of the Union again, right? So I would like to figure out why America required a civil war to do what the rest of the world could do peacefully, and that is to stop the ownership of human beings. Like, as someone who lived in the South, it's always been explained, like, it was about property rights. Yeah. You considered owning humans property, my guy. Like, nowhere in the Constitution do you have the right to do that. Nowhere in the religious book you claim to follow says that you're allowed to own slaves as property. And so, I can't wrap my head around the idea that we had to. The only thing I could say is that financially, that it would have wrecked the economy, and it really did. It did wreck the economy, to the point to where the poor blacks ended up north. If you ever wonder why there was like a mass migration up north of black people, there were no jobs in the South, right? Because the South, the Confederate area, instead of joining the rest of the world in industrialization and factory work and all of that. Now, I personally believe, this is me personally, as the necessity for machinery, as that would have came to America, especially in the South, the need for slavery would have ended. I think this is just me personally, America could have ended slavery without the Civil War. Something happened. There's something that for some reason, like, it makes no sense to me. It just makes no sense to me why we needed a war to do that. Right? It just doesn't make sense to me. But that would probably be the era I would go to. Because that, like, I would love to go and study ancient history and live the ancient lifestyle and see ancient Egypt. It's my favorite eras of history is ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, ancient Greece. But realistically, if I took a time machine back to those areas, and I'm the same person when I step out of the time machine on the other side, me being white and Germanic, I would have been considered a barbarian, and I would have probably been killed. So I don't want to step out of the time. Like, if I would have stepped out of the time machine in 1800s Europe, or excuse me, 1800s America, and started asking some questions to Abraham Lincoln, like, I would have at least sort of fit in with the time period, right? You know, I wouldn't have been killed just for stepping outside of it and being a now, they probably would have killed me for asking questions like, hey, Abe, why do we got to do a whole war for this? When you realize Abraham Lincoln didn't care about slavery, the way you look at him kind of changes. But anyway, that's a whole different question. Let's move on to the last question of the episode, where Kara asked, do you think destiny exists, or do we make every choice freely? And I laugh at this question for one reason and one reason only. For the last 2 weeks, I have been in several deep Christian theological debates with other Christians on this very topic. Do human beings choose freely? So, prepare. I know I've already given you an hour and a half. This might be another half hour for this answer. Prepare for me. I gotta break this down because this is a question that I believe is the crux of the Bible. And obviously she asked this question because it is a genuinely religious question. Like now, the way it's worded to me is, do you believe that things are planned and they go as planned, meaning every decision a human makes is predetermined? Or do human beings get to choose freely? So if I was being sarcastic, the answer is yes, right? Do you believe in destiny, or do you believe in free choice for human beings? And the answer is yes. In that, I believe that God has predestined history. I believe he wrote the book before he created it, and he's involved in watching what he wrote as the author come to play. He's deeply involved with his creation. With that being said, I do not believe he created mankind to be robots. So I'm not a fatalist. In that everything has been pre-planned, so there's no reason for me to, be an active participant, because everything I'm going to do, God has made me do. Like, fatalists believe God makes people do things. I'm not a fatalist. I'm what is known as you could say a determinist, or I think it's called compatibilist theology. I think that's the word for it. I think it's called compatibilist theology. I could be wrong. I don't think that's... I don't know where I got that from. But to answer the question, we have to break down some ideas and some words. That if you're asking the question Okay, so it's not compatibilist. It's compatibilism is what I believe. Compatibilism, which is a view that human free agency. I don't like the word free will. I want to explain the difference. Human free agency is compatible with determinism or divine sovereignty. So we don't, like, I don't believe God forces me to do anything, that I have free agency. I'm going to blow everyone's mind real quick, though, in that we have to start with the understanding that God himself does not have free will. And when I say free will, I'm going to define that as what is known as libertarian free will, which states that you essentially can do whatever you choose to do. Now, right? So God does not have libertarian free will. You know how I know that? Hebrew says that God cannot lie. So God can't choose to lie. God is limited in what he can and cannot do. So he has free agency, but he doesn't have free will. He doesn't have the ability to do whatever he wants. He's limited by his nature. What does that mean? God has attributes. So God is love. God is patience. God is wrath. God is truth. God is immutable, meaning he was not created, therefore he cannot be recreated, right? So there are things that God can't do. He can't lie. He can't recreate himself. He can't end because he's eternal. So there are things that God can't do in that same way. So what that means is he has free agency, and what true freedom is, because a lot of people misunderstand the idea of freedom. Freedom isn't the ability to do whatever you want to do. Freedom is the ability to do, or freedom is the ability to make choices in accordance to the limitations placed upon you by your nature. Right? So I have to break down the fundamentals before I can answer the question. So what does that mean? So when it comes to human beings, what is the nature of man? Well, the nature of man, and here's the cool thing. The Bible actually, there's a reason why the Bible itself calls itself, or says about itself, that it has everything in it has been revealed for life and godliness, right? Every answer you have about God, that God wanted to be revealed to you, is in this book. So the nature of man is actually within this book, and it's all over the place. We could see it in Genesis, where we see that Adam and Eve, and so we'll get there in a second. We see that. So we'll start there now. Actually, Adam and Eve, when they were created, I'm going to use a big theological word. It's called the covenant of works. So the covenant of works essentially said, think of covenant this way. Contract, right? Because that's the best way we can describe it in 21st century Western America, right? In American culture, right? A contract. If you were handed a contract, there's a list of things you have to do, a list of things I have to do, and then a punishment, if the list of punishments if you break your responsibilities or if I break my responsibilities, right? So the covenant of works is God going to Adam saying, here's the deal. You can eat of any tree in the garden here, but you can't eat of that one, right? So that's your responsibility. God's responsibility was kind of, if you do that, you won't die. You will have access to essentially eternal life. If you don't eat of that one tree in this garden, you have access to me and to life and to the garden. But the day you eat of it, you will die. You will be separated from me, and you will be punished, right? So responsibilities and consequences, right? Adam ate. He broke the curse. Now he broke the covenant, meaning through him being what is known as federal headship. To break this down, the husband is the federal head of the family, right? In a traditionalist standpoint, right? Meaning, if I was married and had kids, I led and represented my family, and whatever I did would represent on them, right? In the same way, the president, Donald Trump, is the federal head of America. Even if I didn't like Donald Trump, let's say Trump decided to go to war against Nigeria, right? And I don't want a war against Nigeria, and I don't like Trump or whatever, right? It doesn't matter, because I am a citizen of the country he is the head of. If he declares war on Nigeria, I'm at war with Nigeria, even if I don't want to be, right? That's how federal headship works. So in that, let me use a sports analogy to represent federal headship, right? I'm an offensive lineman, right? I jump off sides before the snap count, right? It's on 2 and we get clap, and before the second clap, I jump, right? And we get a penalty. I represent the team, not just myself. Am I the only person that has to go back 5 yards? No, the whole team, because I represent the team, right, is punished. So because Adam represented mankind when he missed the mark, when he ate of the fruit, when he broke the covenant, he then brought forth into human beings in their nature a nature that is depraved, a nature that is wicked, a nature that is self-centered, a nature that is ultimately going to lead to death. And the writer of the book of Romans, who would be Paul, actually describes this in the 3rd chapter of his book to the Romans, where he says, he says, as it is written, there's none righteous, not even one, none who understand. There's none who seek for God. All have turned away. Together all have become worthless, because there is none who does good, not even one. The Old Testament even says your good works are bad works. The best that you offer, the metaphor is menstrual bloody rags, are the best that you can offer in comparison to God, who is the standard, right, of righteousness. And so the nature of man by birth is to do evil. And we see this because through Adam and Eve's children, evil takes place. It's their nature. Cain didn't have to think about murdering Abel. It just was natural. Think about your own life, right? No one had to teach you how to say no. No one had to teach you how to do wrong. It just sort of came to you, right? And so when you ask the question, can man freely choose? The question I will say is yes, we have free agency, meaning I can choose within my nature, within the limitations of my nature. I can choose to make decisions. But there's a bias there. So if we go back to the libertarian free will side, right? The people who believe that I can make whatever choice I want and I have libertarian free will, they will say that mankind has no bias or inclination, meaning we are neutral. But that's not, first off, that's not true by experience. We understand depravity because we see it all the time. People choose to do evil all the time because their hearts are hardened and dark and they do evil things. We understand that, right? But also what I just read to you says that no one is neutral. Our nature is designed, and by nature we are children of wrath, determined to do evil. We want to do it. None of us want to please God in our natural state. If I can continue to quote scripture, Ephesians 2 says we're dead in our sins. Other places I'm very bad with references, but there are other places where like the metaphor is that you have a hardened heart that's dead. Ezekiel 36, God says, I'm going to take that hard heart, I'm going to soften it, and I'm going to place my law in your hearts, and I'm going to sprinkle you with water, which is symbolism of purification, or what the big theological word of regeneration. I'm going to make you reborn, as Jesus says to Nicodemus when he says you must be born again. The whole concept behind all of this is that in my natural self, I will always choose to do evil, right? And so I do believe that we are free agents. We are able to do and make choices. So I'm not a fatalist in that I don't like the word fate, and I don't like the word destiny, but I do like the word providence. We see providence in the scriptures. We see the idea of providence in the book of Esther, where a little context on the book of Esther, Esther and her cousin Mordecai, well, Esther's Hebrew name, by the way, is Hadassah, which, can I be honest, is a sexier name, by the way. I just got to say, Hadassah is a beautiful name. And I don't mean that in a weird way at all. Like, that would be like if I could choose, like, Hadassah is a beautiful name. I would name my daughter that. It's unique. I don't know any Hadassahs, right? But it's better than Esther, in my opinion. But Esther and her cousin Mordecai were living in Persia, probably in India, and at the city. They're in Susa, which is India, a city in India at the time, in the Persian Empire. And the Persians, under Cyrus, allowed the Jews to go home, and they were decreed by God to go back to Israel. And a lot of them were lazy and disobeyed God. Esther was one of them, right? She was living in active disobedience to God. So now, I've never been to a women's study when they study Esther, but I've heard a lot about them, where the women, when women study Esther, all they want to talk about with Esther is how she was used by God. They don't ever want to talk about the fact that she was actively disobeying God by not going back to Israel, and by entering herself in a beauty contest to be the next queen in a harem of what is estimated to be about 1,000 women that King Artaxerxes had. And she was chosen to be the queen, not because she didn't choose to do these things, but by what we understand, that God is sovereign and he has a plan. And as we read the story, you understand that the reason that God allowed Esther to be in her disobedience was because he needed her there to save them from Haman, the Jews, who Haman was planning, and he was planning a Holocaust before Hitler, where he was going to mass extinguish the Jews, and that plot was discovered by Mordecai, told to Esther, and Esther's, the famous line that Esther says, I'm going to stand before the king, and if I die, I die. Right? But we see the idea of providence, and that God is sovereignly directing history for his good. We see this in the book of Genesis, where Joseph's brother, freely choosing to bully him and to sell him into slavery, he gets taken to Egypt. By God's providence, God allows this evil to happen. We see in the final chapter of Genesis when his brothers and his dad come to Egypt, and there's a famine in Israel, so they come to Egypt, and they're bowing before Joseph, not recognizing that it's Joseph, and they're begging for food, and he eventually reveals himself, and what he says was, "What you intended for evil, God intended for good." For essentially for the salvation of for the people. And they stayed in Egypt. And then God then used Joseph's story of getting them to Egypt for a reason. They would eventually be sold into slavery for 400 years. First off, that's prophesied, by the way, to Abraham. Thousands of years before it happened. By the way. Like, Abraham was told in Genesis 15, you're going to be blessed with a nation, but they're going to be basically treated as slaves in a foreign land. And that comes true. And by the end of the book, they're in Egypt, and they're enslaved. And 400 years later, they finally get to leave through a man named Moses. But how do you get to Egypt? Joseph needed to be sold into slavery by his brothers who freely, right? So yes, we make free choices, but God is not reactionary. He knows, he allows things to happen that are evil. He allows things to happen. This doesn't make him evil. It's just that we are evil, and because there is no one good, he has to use evil people for his plan, right? He has to use evil people to accomplish his will. So we see things like this where Israel sins and is an active rebellion against God. So God then uses Babylon to invade and take captive the Judeans to Babylon, of which we get Daniel. Now, Daniel then becomes practically second in command. He's in charge of the Magi, or the dream tellers, the psychics, right? He was used by God to tell the dreams, and Daniel prophesied thousands of years before Christ of the coming Messiah. And he told them to the pagan magi, who must have wrote it down, because you guys recall the Christmas story? And we always talk about the three wise men. Well, where do they come from? They were magi from Mesopotamia, from the east. And how would they have known about the Messiah and to come look for the Messiah? Because Daniel, thousands of years later, told them about it. What you intended for evil, God intended for good. So that the Magi can come, setting up the sort of paradox of Christianity, that Jesus came for the Jews, but the Jews denied him, and every single Gentile that ever experienced him received him. Right? Romans 11 says that there will be so many Gentiles that come to see Messiah, that and the intended purpose of that is to make the Jews jealous. So in short, I don't believe in a fatalistic destiny, that you have one person that you're supposed to marry, and if you don't do that, you're ruining the plan of God. No, God knows who you're going to marry, and he's going to set that person in your life, and he's going to allow each of you individually to make choices. But if I'm destined, and I do believe in predestination or destiny in the sense of there's one, the God knows who I'm going to marry, but that's not on me to figure out. He's going to have that happen, right? I think we get so set up on like, well, it's just fate. No, sometimes things just happen, but God's going to use bad things for his plan. So we have to balance the free agency of man and the the sovereignty of God, and that God is sovereign. Everything that will happen, everything that has happened, and everything that is currently happening is under his control, and he allows it to happen. But at the same time, he allows us the free agency to make choices within the limitations of our nature. And so I can choose who I want to marry, but that's not going to surprise God, right? I can choose what I eat for breakfast, but it's not like, because there's the arguments that I've been having were very abstract, philosophical, libertarian free will arguments that if I choose a banana instead of a bagel, that I have to have the ability to have had chosen the bagel, even though God knows I'm going to choose the banana. And I'm like, you're too abstract. You're completely misunderstanding the Bible. You're in mainline secular philosophy with what you're talking about. The Bible is very clear. We're sinners. We suck at this. Christ sent God let's reverse that. God sent Christ, his son, to redeem us. And when we're redeemed, we're able to choose him because he changed our nature. And so now we can make that choice, right? And so I wouldn't get too focused on destiny or fate or any of that. Just know that if anything happens, God either ordained it or he allows it. But he's always in control, right? If he's not in control, if he's not 100% sovereign, he's not God. So he's always in control. So whatever happens, he either ordained it to happen or he gave permission. We see in the story of Job, Satan had to go to God and get permission to tempt Job and to attack Job. So God either ordains it to happen or he allows it to happen. But he allows it to happen for a reason, and that's ultimately, we don't even know the reason sometimes. But it's ultimately for his glory and for his story to play out, right? And so that's how I would answer that question of destiny and fate. I'm not a fatalist. I do believe God has determined certain things to happen, and the goal is to trust that he is sovereign, that he is in control, and that he knows what he's doing, and he's been doing it for a long time. And that whatever he allows to happen for, Romans 8:28 says that all things happen for the good of those who have been called by God in accordance to his purposes. So I do believe the story's been written out. It's finished. He authored it before he created the earth. And he's watching it come out into play. And he's not reacting to my choices and saying, well, he was supposed to marry so-and-so, and he just didn't catch the sign because he's stupid. And, that would be what I would do. I'm stupid. I'm a little bit, to quote Alex Jones, I'm a little bit retarded, bro. And I would miss all the signs in the world. Like, hey, God could put a neon billboard sign that she's the one you're supposed, stop being a little scaredy cat and marry this one. And I would still miss the sign, right? Like, no, God, if that's how you work, let me know, because I'm tired of waiting. Anyway, that's a whole different conversation. But I hope that makes sense. This is a very deep concept, and I'll say this: if you are a believer in Christianity, as long as you believe that God is sovereign and in control of everything, I don't think we should worry about really the free will aspect of all this. Just trust that God knows what he's doing, and all things work out for your good. And so I hope that's a good answer to your question. But yeah. But with that, that's another episode of the Slapping Meat Community Show. I am WETOODEEP. Thank you all for listening, and I will see you on the next episode.
So hit that and subscribe, come along for the ride, whether it's NXT or NFL time. Going in the ropes and fourth and deep, slapping meat community every Tuesday. Community.